Welcome to another episode of An Inside Job, War on Addiction. My name is Ron. I'm the host of this show. I always begin the shows with a quote from my favorite author to do with addiction. And he explains, his name is Dr. Gabor Mate, his book, In the Realm of the Hungry Ghost. He explains addiction as biological, chemical, neurological, physiological, medical, emotional, social, political, economical, with spiritual underpinnings. I want to thank LTV now, Leominster Access Television, for all their support, energy, and everything else that it takes to produce this thing. It'd be nothing without those guys. We're going into our fourth season, and with this, we're going to have 57 episodes. I am now, with the help of LTV, I'm pulling out excerpts, and I'll be splicing them together as to, let's say, example, ask the question, how did you begin? And tapes just parts of the shows with different people, 5 or 6, and I think it's really going to be good if I can pull it off. Okay. The show is on YouTube. Go on to YouTube, search Leominster TV, go to playlist, scroll down, and it's An Inside Job. Okay, I'm going to welcome my good friend. Can I say that? Good friend Eddy?
Sure, absolutely.
I've known Eddy for a long time. Did we meet at a meeting or music or?
Probably. I don't know. I was kind of a part of, I can't remember how we first met. I was a part of the, the group over there that meets at the Unitarian Church where your wife was a minister. And I was part of Thayer's Symphony when I first moved out here. When I think your wife was
Yes.
was maybe possibly taking piano lessons there or something.
No,
or,
I was.
Oh, you were. So I might have, that was probably,
Okay.
because that was one of the first jobs I had when I moved to this area from Boston, was working for Maestro Wada at Thayer Symphony.
I did not know that. Yeah. I'm a good friend of Francis.
Yeah, when I was moving my stuff out here to Fitchburg is where I live now, I happened to stop in that rest area, and I mentioned that I was a musician, that I was a teacher, and she was like, well, you should contact this Maestro Wada. He had just split off from the place at Lancaster and was starting a music school, and so I went for an interview, and that's where I worked for at least 5 or 6 years.
Very spiritual man.
Yeah, I've always liked him.
Great guy, and his wife Donna.
Uh-huh.
All right. How did it begin with you, with your addiction?
With recovery? Well, how it began. As with a lot of people that I hear speak, I didn't feel like I fit, all through school. Before.
Let's go back, excuse me, a little with you growing up.
Yes.
I know there's a silver spoon there somewhere.
Probably slightly. I don't know. I grew up in Greensboro, North Carolina. That's where I was born. Yeah, I think we were a little more well-off than most families. I guess it depends. It's all comparative. But, yeah, my father had an airplane, and it was a really big house on 100 acres. And on the outside, it looked really good. On the inside, I guess I can break down. Both my parents are gone now. But my mother drank alcoholically growing up. So needless to say, there was a lot of shouting and door slamming and all that stuff. And my father would, he would come home. He was the type that would drink 1 or 2 drinks and over business, and he thought everyone should be able to control it that way.
Right.
But my mother, was more of a closet drunk and so we never knew as kids whether, she was going to be nice.
Did it run in her family also?
I think it did because, and I'm positive it did, that I had never met her father. She didn't want anything to do with him because he had left, And as far as I know, he was he liked to drink and chase women and things of that nature. And my grandmother, my mother's mother was around for us, But my mother did end up getting sober when I was about 14. Which is when I was just kind of getting started. So for me, I never really had a relationship with my mother till I got sober, which was I got sober when I was 25.
So what got her sober at what age?
How old was she, or how old was I? I don't know. Sure, I could probably figure it out in my head, but
not important. Well, you were 14, so
So
anywhere from 25 to.
No, she was. Both of my parents were a bit older.
Okay.
I know my father was 15 years older than my mother. I know my father was 44 when I was born, so that was I had a double generation gap.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But I mean, I don't blame them for any way that I turned out. I mean, that was my. But I do think for other people that are listening, and hopefully hopefully I say things that will help people. When you grow up in these situations, I don't know if there are any, normal. I mean, life's not the Brady Bunch or the Waltons. We grow up seeing that on TV. I don't think there are very many.
People won't understand that. Look,
I don't
the
think
Brady Bunch.
I don't think very many families are really that way. There's probably some other family show by now. So most families are somewhat dysfunctional, but I think if you grow up in these alcoholic home, even if you don't turn to drugs and alcohol yourself, you grow up with these fears and things that you really should talk to someone about. I didn't really understand that till after I got sober for a while, and someone mentioned, well, you should really check out these adult children of alcoholics meetings. And you start to you grow up with this fear of abandonment was a big thing, and you'll bring that into your own relationships. I thought that's how marriage worked. You fight a while, you argue, and that's because most people I knew that's the way. But it doesn't have to be that way. I'm married now, and we very seldom ever have a fight at all. Every once in a while we won't speak to each other, but it's not nothing permanent. We can talk it out. My wife's in the program as well, so we can work that out.
I had forgot that. I've met your wife, but I forgot that.
Yeah, maybe you can get her on the show.
I'd love to.
Yeah.
I'd love. Would she come on?
Oh, she would. Yeah.
We'll ask her.
Yeah, I will. So anyway,
I'd like to get both of you on.
Yeah,
together.
we could. Yeah, that would be good.
Cool.
Yeah. So for me, I have been sober a while. It's a daily. It's still a daily thing. I mean, sometimes you'll hear people at meetings. They'll say, "Well, whoever got up the earliest, that's how they're." I guess the metaphor that they're saying, well, it's just a daily thing.
Right.
And I think it gets easier to not drink for a day the longer I stay sober. But on the other hand, I think 1 year, 2 years, you're a little. For me, I was a lot more vigilant. So
how old were you when you were getting sober?
25. I was 25.
Oh, wow.
November 1st of 1985 is my sobriety date. So you can figure out how old I am from that. Most of the time when I hear people say something like that, I'm calculating in my head. But no, I'm 59 now.
Yeah.
So
boy, you got it early, 25.
I was lucky, and I think I was. If I would have kept going, I don't think I would have made it. I would have, as you hear over and over, the jails, institutions, or death. I had already been doing some jail time, and I had been several visits to mental health and mental institutions and things. And they, I really didn't relate that it might be because of alcohol. Almost then I thought of it as somewhat of a rite of passage, the people I hung out with, oh yeah, I've been to jail, or
When did you begin with, your antics?
I would say probably 12 or 13. I can remember just kind of hanging out with the boys after school, and it starts with maybe cigarettes or something. We were going up to the tree house. In North Carolina, we could pick tobacco out of the fields and take it up to our tree house, and we'd smoke that, which was, it would make us feel way different. And then my mother, being an alcoholic, we would find things hidden in the house, and of course we would take that up to the tree house. I remember finding a bottle of scotch. It wasn't very old, and we split it between 3 or 4 of us, and it made us sick. But I couldn't wait to do it again. I thought
So, let me interrupt. So, what were the effects of that when you picked up the first one? Like me, I fell in love, and you alluded to that you couldn't wait to do it again.
Yeah, I think for me and for most of us that have this disease, I think about it. You hear those promises in the big book. All those came true when I first drank too.
Yeah.
I had no fear of anything. I felt like I fit because I had, well, for one thing, not feeling like I was in any certain crowd. I wasn't good in sports. I'm still not, although I do
Were
run.
you playing music?
Yeah, I was playing already.
Yeah.
And I wasn't one of the really smart kids, so finding a group that I fit in, which in my high school days was we called it the bong club. We would be doing bong hits before school or whatever, and drinking was always part of it too. It was just a lot easier. The 70s, I mean, it was easier to buy drugs than it was to buy a Coca-Cola at my school anyway.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of stuff around. And every once in a while you would hear about someone having some problems or something, but it wasn't too...
Just weed at that point?
No, there was like speed, a lot of speed around at that time. I didn't... I think I started doing the heavy duty, like hallucinogenics, probably when I was about 17, 18, like LSD and all that stuff. There was there was a lot of it was around here now, MDA or something. It was we had no idea what it was. It was just powder. We could buy it, and it would keep us high for a couple of days. I think it's about the same thing that they call ecstasy lately or something. But anyway, all that kind of stuff was going around in those days. And then, but it got to be, I would say, from the time I was about 17 or 18, the drinking became a daily thing. And whatever else was around, I would be doing it. I never considered myself a drug addict because for some reason I knew not to do the same drug all the time. I would switch off, for cocaine, for a little while. And I understood addiction that I think for anyone who's maybe doesn't, this is true with, I think, with alcohol, tobacco, and heroin too. When you first do it, you go way up above this line of being normal, and you feel really good, like you've never.
Yeah.
But then you come a little bit below, and then you go back. But the next time, I think, if you do it right after that, you will only go about halfway up there.
Yeah.
And you'll come down a little bit further. And it doesn't take long before you have to have it to even to feel somewhat normal.
Are you talking about hallucinogenics or
Not hallucinogenics. I would say like narcotics
Pills,
more
yeah.
than anything.
Yeah.
hallucinogenics, I mean, that's kind of, we used to think they were just trying to scare us, but there's some people who don't really come down off of that stuff,
Yeah.
and it's kind of scary now to think about that I used to do all that stuff without any fear whatsoever. And I see a lot of young people these days who have to die out there, and it's really sad that they don't find a way to because there is a way out. And for me, what got me here, really, what got me sober was the court system of North Carolina. I had multiple driving while impaired. Down there was first they called it driving under the influence, and they changed. I don't know what all the change was. It was mainly because driving while impaired meant you could be on anything and they could arrest you.
Yeah.
So the last time I went that I got caught, it had been the third one, and two within 1 year. There were several what they called aggravating factors. For one thing, the blood alcohol was like a 0.26, which is like close to 3 times over the limit, or I don't even know what the limit is anymore. So there was that, and a couple of other things. For having 2 in 1 year, and then at that time, the whole the Mothers Against Drunk Drivers were making a lot of weight, and my lawyers were telling me, well, it's just it's written out in black and white, and I was facing 12 to 18 months, but somehow I got out. I still had to do 30 days, but they let me do that on the weekends, and I had to go through a treatment center, and they told me if anything else ever happened, I had to do that 12 to 18 months in jail. And my lawyer warned me. He said it's written out right there, So and when I went into treatment, it was a county-run treatment center. It really, the first week I was like, well, I'll be glad when I get out of here so I can, party and use again. And I had already developed somewhat of a network within AA, even though I didn't know it, because I had been court-ordered to meetings. So I had some friends who had known me, and they knew I was in there, and they would come to check how I was doing. And friends of my parents that were in the program. So I had a little bit of a network, and then I think maybe the second week, we would go to classes in the day, and we would work the steps in the daytime. And then, they would have some outdoor time playing basketball. I had some really good counselors in there that helped me a lot. And for some reason, that day at a time thing started to sink in. Would just get through one day without drinking or using. And you start to feel better right away, because I've been drinking every single day and partying pretty heavily. So yeah, physically you feel better. I think being in a protected environment for that 30 days is really what I needed. And then to find somewhat of a, not to be religious, but I needed to find a God of my understanding, or a higher power of some kind, because I couldn't rely on my thinking. I had already proved that over and over.
Yeah, that's a great point, too.
And so first getting out, there was a lot of fear, because I was going out in the world, and I had, Coke dealers calling me, well, we got some really good stuff, want to come over? And I'm like, well, no. And I was able to do that. And it was a daily thing. And it was, when I first got out of treatment and first got sober, it was a little, I think one day at a time was a little too long. It was one drink at a time. Don't take this one, or one drug at a time.
For how long, when it was really bad?
I don't know, but I can remember going into like convenience store, and like I still smoked cigarettes, and I would make a beeline not to pass the beer. Down there they sell beer and wine in convenience stores, and it's like New Hampshire, the state has the liquor stores. But so I would just kind of not even walk near it. It was like it's like a rattlesnake or something, you know. I don't I don't want to be close, you know, or somebody offers me one, I'm jumping back, you know, because I know what it does to me. And it seemed to get, and then, you know, just some of the thoughts of, well, I better stop at the liquor store. It's called, oh yeah, I don't drink anymore, you know, things like that. And it just, I think maybe after about a year, I started leveling out. But I didn't really know that. I probably looked kind of bad for it because I can remember like I said, my sobriety date's November 1st of '85. I can remember being at an AA New Year's party, a New Year's Eve party, and people would say, "Oh, don't worry, it gets better." So I must have not looked like. I said, "Oh, well, it already is." You know, it was already a lot better than, you know, trying to stay high all day or which was a pretty big job. You know, you're trying to figure out where you're going to get drugs and alcohol, and you know, then I was always still, even when I had like an 8-ball of cocaine or half a gallon of liquor, I was already thinking about, well, what about when this runs out? You know, I mean, what are we gonna? We better get something fronted to us. You know, we don't have any more money. let's. I think when it started to level out, going to a lot of meetings and kind of just doing what was in front of me. I kept the same job that I had before I went in, which was working for my uncle in the paper recycling business. And I held that job for maybe a year or so. Then I went to work for a friend in the program doing remodeling and stuff, and which worked a lot better because, you know, and then I worked for several other people doing kind of the same type of work, remodeling or painting and all that stuff that were in the program. So it was kind of like we could talk about things like that on the job, you know, if we needed to. So that was exactly what I needed at the time. And getting sober, you know, I was able to get my own place. I had apartments and stuff for short times, drinking and using, but it was really difficult to keep it together or to keep from. I've always played music. To keep from pawning my stuff, you know, or selling it or whatever. So even within a few years, I was able to. I guess up here you get an apartment, but I grew up out in the country, so I got a mobile home. So I purchased that. I was owning it, and I had some land, and people would say, well, you can do whatever you want when you're...
This is back there.
Yeah, in North Carolina. And I was married once down there. That seemed to didn't work out. It worked out for a few years, and then...
Sober?
Yep. Yeah, I was sober. And then it was like when that marriage split up, that was one of those times. I had about 7 or 8 years sober, I think. It was either drink again or shoot myself or go back. Because I had slacked off on meetings in the program. And
how often do you hear that, right?
You do. And if you go to meetings, you hear people say, well, I stopped going to meetings. And then, you know, so for me, I still go to meetings a couple of weeks, most of the time. And if something like that happens in my life, it's okay. Someone told me, well, you can start your program over without going back out. So you go back and make 90 meetings in 90 days.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you don't...
Explain that just a little more.
Oh, so when people first come in the program, they recommend, the old timers will recommend, well, you go to 90 meetings in 90 days. I would go on to say, try to make a meeting at least every day. Because for me, a good alcoholic, well, I would say, well, I'll just go to 3 a day for a month. I could take a month off. But so even though I'll sometimes feel incredibly bored in meetings, and maybe I shouldn't say that. That's only me. And I'll think I'm not getting nothing out of it. But if I try not going for a while, I notice a lot of these defects of character come out. Someone told me one time I could tell where my spirituality was by how much of an asshole the guy in front of me is. So, so if everyone's bothered me a lot, you know, that's
I do know.
So that's when I need to work on me.
Yeah.
And it's I do have to stop searching outward for something to make me happy on the inside. And it's been a process. It's not something that came overnight. The same as with my music. You know, I had to practice every day for a long time.
Yeah.
The same with this program. You know, we have to be vigilant and keep working on this. Or we hear it over and over. You know, people 20, 30 years or whatever, they don't make it. You know, or they struggle to get back. So that scares me enough, and I love being sober. You know, I was able to give up the tobacco and everything else too, which took time. I think things seem to come in time. Not that I'm so great for giving up tobacco. They told me I was getting emphysema and then a better.
Oh, really?
Well, yeah.
They
But
were
it's
telling
been,
you that?
well, I went to the doctor and they were, can you breathe any deeper? You know.
Oh.
So it was like that stuff will kill you too. But I'm glad it's been well over 10 years and since I quit the tobacco, and then I guess this is 34 since I gave up the alcohol and drugs. For me, having the good counselors. Then, I didn't really, pot wasn't my drug of choice anyway, but people would say stuff like, oh, well, you can still smoke pot, right? No, I can't,
Yeah.
For me, it doesn't work. And most of the time when I see people come in, they try to keep smoking weed.
Yeah.
They eventually go back to
Right.
whatever their drug of choice
Yeah.
happened to have been.
Yeah.
Plus, I think, we're told over and over, it's a program of honesty. I have to be honest with myself. If I have to lie about something I'm doing like that, well, then I'm going to have to cover it up with
Excuse me, we're just going to have about 2 minutes, so you know. And
Oh.
then we're going to do another show.
Oh, okay, yeah. So to wrap it up, so I'm wrapping it up, yeah?
No.
Or you want me back on?
Yeah, just keep going.
Okay. So yeah, I would emphasize that my life has really turned out way beyond my wildest dreams. I ended up in the Northeast. People would say, well, you can do whatever you want when you're sober. So I said, well, I'll go back to music school. I was going to go to UNCG or North Carolina School of the Arts, but I ended up applying as a long shot to Berkeley. Got my degree from there. Then I said, well, what do you do with a music degree? So I ended up doing a master's in education at UMass Boston.
Wow.
I did really well, and I barely made it through high school, mainly because of my drugging and drinking. I just,
Yeah.
I didn't even know I could even study, because I assumed that, because I didn't do good in school, high school, that I wasn't very smart. So
Now we're going to have to wrap it up.
Okay.
All right, we'll just start up again. So that is a wrap.